In the year of his greatest downfall, Simon was forced to break up with his first love and marry me in an arranged marriage. We quarreled for the entirety of our 4-year marriage. In our final argument, I was tragically attacked by a home intruder. I called Simon for help, but he didn't answer. He was at the hospital with his first love, taking care of her with utmost attention, which even landed them on the trending news. Simon thought I would be angry and jealous, and then, as usual, come to him to argue. But despite waiting for a long time, he never received any contact from me. That day, while picking up his first love from the hospital, he received a message from the police. Suddenly, he remembered the call he had ignored. Panic surged through him. Chapter 1. Sarah, have you had enough? What do you want? Simon tore the divorce papers I had thrown at him, his voice filled with anger. I was even angrier. Either break off with Lily now or get a divorce. He glared. I've told you, there's nothing between Lily and me. Why can't you accept her? I found it laughable. What do you mean I can't accept her? What does it mean when she calls you at midnight for help? Doesn't Lily know you're married? She's living here alone, knows no one. If she's unwell, why can't I take care of her? Why are you always so aggressive? Listening to Simon's words, I felt a surge of anger, almost exploding. Then go take care of her. Best if you do it in bed. You're simply unreasonable. Simon was furious, his face dark, but he couldn't do anything to me. He could only slam the door and leave. After he left, I sat alone on the bed. Half an hour passed, and I thought I heard noises in the living room. Thinking he had returned, I immediately went to check. Opening the door, I didn't see Simon but 3 men with fierce expressions rummaging through our home. They saw me, and I quickly shut and locked the door, calling Simon first thing. But he saw my call and, without thinking, hung up. The door couldn't hold for long. Soon, the intruders broke in with weapons. I struggled desperately, but in the end, a blade pierced my heart. Lying on the ground, I gradually lost my breath. As I drew my last breath, my soul floated into the air. I watched the 3 intruders panic, not knowing what to do with my body. In the end, they hastily buried me in the backyard garden. Suddenly, a dizzying force pulled my soul uncontrollably, and I found myself by Simon's side. Chapter 2. After leaving home, Simon received a message from Lily and rushed to the hospital. Lily had chronic stomach issues and was in pain again. Every time she had an episode, she would message Simon, who would drop everything to be with her. Simon, I'm sorry to trouble you so late. Lily's voice was soft, carrying an undeniable frailty. Simon was busy taking care of her, comforting her as she spoke. I floated above, watching silently, feeling a heavy weight in my heart. Simon never took care of me like this. Maybe he did, right after we got married when he needed my family's help. I don't know when things changed. Maybe it was when his company started doing well, or when Lily returned. Simon spent several days at the hospital, meticulously caring for Lily. The nurses admired him, often complimenting him when he wasn't in the room. Your boyfriend is so good to you, they would say. Lily didn't correct them, just smiled faintly, leading them to believe she was just shy. On the day of Lily's discharge, a nurse explained to Simon how to take care of Lily's stomach and what foods to avoid. That's about it. Take good care of your girlfriend, the nurse concluded. Simon was taken aback but quickly corrected. We're just friends, and I'm already married. I was surprised he denied it. Lily's face stiffened for a moment. The nurse, realizing her mistake, shot Lily a meaningful glance and muttered under her breath, Scum. Chapter 3. Simon took Lily home. After settling her in, he prepared to leave. Simon, have some hot water before you go, Lily said, tugging at his sleeve. Looking at her, Simon couldn't refuse. Simon, you've been taking care of me these past few days. Won't Sarah make things difficult for you? Lily knew I often argued with Simon because of her. I turned to Simon, curious about his answer. Simon didn't respond immediately. He was probably thinking about my unreasonable demands. No. He finally said. I didn't expect that answer. Simon's phone rang. He quickly took it out, probably expecting someone important. Me? Impossible. He wouldn't answer my calls, so he wouldn't be this eager for my messages. He quickly put his phone down. It was just a message from his secretary. Seemingly remembering something, he picked up his phone again. After checking that there were no messages or calls from me, his face darkened. I watched Simon, wondering what he was thinking. What's wrong, Simon? Is it Sarah? Lily asked, making Simon's face darken further. Rest well, Lily. I'm going home. He said. Okay. Simon went home. Seeing the empty house, his expression turned grim. Sarah, where are you? Stop fooling around and come home. It was the first time Simon spoke first after an argument, even if it was just to scold me. Naturally, I wouldn't reply. After all, I was already gone. Not getting a response, Simon kept calling. The phone rang for a long time with no answer. Furious, he shouted. Fine, Sarah, never answer and never come back for all I care. Simon didn't know I really couldn't come back. If he knew, he would probably be relieved. Simon kept calling. Suddenly, he heard a noise from the backyard. My phone ringing. Was he about to find my body? Would he feel sad about my fate? Simon followed the sound to the backyard. I followed closely. The ringing stopped, my phone had died. But Simon kept walking. He was almost there, almost at the spot where my body lay buried. Chapter 4. Simon's phone rang. Seeing the caller, he answered immediately. What's wrong, Lily? On the other end, Lily's voice trembled with fear. Simon, I'm scared. It sounds like someone is outside, rummaging through my things. Don't be scared, Lily. Lock your door and stay quiet. Simon said, hurrying to her house. Another home invasion? Call the police. I'll be there soon. Simon arrived quickly. Simon, you're finally here. I was so scared. Lily cried, burying her head in his chest. Simon tried to pull away, but seeing her like this, let her cling to him. He arrived just in time, the police came right after him. Lily was lucky, someone saved her. But I wasn't. To comfort Lily, Simon stayed the night. Lying on the couch, he couldn't sleep, lost in thought. Simon took out his phone, opening the chat with me. There were no new messages. Another day passed, with Simon going to work as usual. Lily's condition worsened, requiring surgery. She always relied on Simon, before and after our marriage. Simon, I don't want the surgery. I'm scared. Lily said, tears streaming down her face. Don't be afraid, Lily. I'll be with you the whole time. Simon reassured her, stroking her hair. But won't Sarah be upset? What if she argues with you again because of me? I don't want you two to fight. Lily cried, seemingly thinking of Simon. I watched, bitterly amused. No wonder Simon couldn't let go of her. Don't worry, Lily. Sarah will understand. Yeah, right. Really? Trust me. Chapter 5. Initially, I didn't mind Simon and Lily's relationship. Before, Lily and I were friends. I always treated her like a sister, protecting and helping her at school. We fell out when I found out about her and Simon. Lily knew I always liked Simon, admired him since childhood. I introduced them. When I confessed to Simon, I discovered they were already together. I confronted her, but she said nothing until Simon arrived. Then she cried. Simon and I truly love each other. Sarah, I know you like him too, but I can't leave him. Don't force me. Only then did I see Lily's true colors. After graduation, Simon's family faced a crisis. Lily broke up with Simon and went abroad. In a few days, Simon went from a sought-after heir to a destitute man. I couldn't bear to see him like that. I married him against my family's wishes, using my family's resources to help him rise again. Eventually, Simon made a comeback. Lily returned. For some reason, Simon now believed I drove Lily away, causing their breakup. He hated me for ruining their love. Chapter 6. Lily's stomach condition was severe. After several days of tests, she had surgery. Simon found her a top doctor, and the surgery was successful. During her recovery, Simon continued to care for her whenever he could. During these days, Simon kept messaging me. His tone shifted from reprimanding to pleading for me to come home. I, of course, wouldn't go back. Not in this lifetime. Simon didn't know that. He thought I was just throwing a tantrum and would return once I was done. It had always been like this, just longer this time. Secretary Jones, release the news that I've been taking care of my wife in the hospital. Soon, the trending news was full of Simon's devoted care for his hospitalized wife. Simon Group's stock soared as everyone praised him. Only I found it laughable. Sarah, let's see if you can stay quiet after seeing this. I couldn't understand Simon. Shouldn't he be happy I wasn't around? Why insist on provoking me? Crazy! After watching him these days, I finally saw Simon for what he was. A scumbag unworthy of my love. Pity I saw his true colors only after my passing. Simon didn't hear from me but got a call from my best friend Laura. Laura had been my closest friend since childhood. She was furious when I married Simon, and before I could make peace, she went abroad for further studies. Simon, where are you? Why can't I reach Sarah? Chapter 7. Simon didn't answer directly. He knew Laura disliked him. Not knowing how to respond, he brushed her off, saying he didn't know either, and hung up. Why hang up on me? Idiot. Laura muttered, unable to reach me, and returned home. Seeing the trending news, she rushed to the hospital, not knowing the hospitalized wife wasn't me. Simon, will you divorce Sarah? Lily cautiously asked. This surgery was at the same hospital as before. The nurses now knew she wasn't Simon's girlfriend and that he was married. These days, without Simon around, she faced constant disdain. Simon was silent for a while. Pouring Lily a glass of water, he said, You should rest, Lily. Lily, feeling wronged, started crying. Simon, I know you don't love Sarah. If she hadn't forced me to leave, we wouldn't have broken up, and you wouldn't have had to marry her. Simon, I don't want to see you trapped in a loveless marriage. It breaks my heart. I scoffed. When did I force you to leave? Even though I suspected Lily told Simon I forced her out, hearing her say it still infuriated me. After a long silence, Simon gently hugged Lily. Lily, Sarah will make a scene. She won't agree to a divorce. Let's not talk about this now. I rolled my eyes. I had agreed to a divorce, but Simon refused to sign, thinking I was being difficult. What are you doing? Chapter 8. Laura's voice interrupted, and she stormed in, pulling Simon away and slapping him. Simon! Lily called out. Laura turned and slapped her too. Seeing Laura again, I felt a mix of sadness and guilt. Laura! Are you crazy? Simon reacted, grabbing Laura's hand to stop her from hitting Lily again. Crazy! Simon, don't forget you're married to Sarah. You owe everything to her, yet what are you doing? Flirting with your mistress in a hospital? Do you think you're worthy of Sarah? People outside gathered to watch, pointing fingers at Simon and Lily. I closed my eyes, not wanting to see more. Lily had kissed Simon just before Laura barged in and slapped him. Hospitals are no place for quarrels, so Simon took Laura outside to talk, leaving Lily behind in the ward to face the stairs. Where's Sarah? Does she know about you and that bitch Lily? And what's with the trending news? I don't believe you had nothing to do with it. Laura demanded. Laura was very smart. Her father always said his daughter was as capable as any man and that the family business would be hers in the future. Perhaps feeling guilty, Simon confessed to Laura. I had a fight with Sarah, and I left. When I came back, she was gone. She didn't answer my calls or texts. The trending news was my idea, to provoke her into coming back. Laura was furious, but her main concern was finding me. She first contacted my family and then called the police. Why are you calling the police? Simon scoffed. Sarah's just hiding after our fight. Nothing could have happened to her. Huh, Sarah's been missing for a week, and you tell me nothing's wrong? That bitch Lily is still fine, isn't she? You're guarding her like a loyal dog in the hospital. Laura retorted. Laura! Simon's face darkened, but he knew he was in the wrong and said nothing more. Simon, if anything happens to Sarah, I won't let you or that bitch off. Laura declared before leaving. Simon stayed where he was, refusing to believe anything could have happened to me. After the confrontation with Laura, he didn't feel like returning to the hospital and went to his office instead. Chapter 9. Another 2 days passed. During this time, Simon spent most of his time at the office, dealing with work. I wondered how Laura was doing, whether she had discovered my fate, and if my parents knew. But for some reason, my spirit was bound to Simon. That day, Lily was being discharged, and Simon went to pick her up. Simon, has Sarah contacted you? No. I saw a trace of a smile on Lily's lips. It's all my fault that Sarah doesn't want to come back. Lily, it's my fault, not yours. Simon comforted her gently. His phone vibrated in his pocket. He answered. Hello, is this Mr. Simon? Yes, it is. This is the local police department. Regarding the disappearance of your wife, Sarah. Had they found my body? Simon hurried home. As soon as he entered, he saw my parents, Laura, and 2 police officers in the living room. Dad, Mom? Seeing Simon, my parents' anger flared, especially when they saw Lily behind him. My mother slapped Simon across the face. I should never have agreed to let Sarah marry you. Auntie, Simon hasn't done anything wrong. How can you hit him? Lily protested, stepping forward to hold Simon. Miss, I believe you know Simon is married. Anyone with a shred of dignity wouldn't cling to another woman's husband and come home with him. My father retorted coldly. Lily's face turned red and white with embarrassment, unable to say a word. Simon, when was the last time you contacted Sarah? My father asked. Simon thought for a moment and confirmed the last time he saw me was the night of our fight, which was 2 weeks ago. Mr. Simon, are you sure the last contact with Mrs. Sarah was 2 weeks ago? One of the officers asked. I'm sure. Realizing I had been missing for 2 weeks, my mother's eyes reddened, and she nearly collapsed. Fortunately, my father and Laura were there to support her. Chapter 10. 2 weeks ago, there were several home invasion robberies in this neighborhood, with some resulting in injuries and deaths. The officer explained. Officer, are you suggesting my daughter might have been harmed? My father asked, his voice trembling. We can't rule out that possibility. Suddenly, Simon remembered hearing the ringtone in the backyard. No, that's impossible. I came back a few days ago. I called Sarah, and I heard her phone in the backyard. She must have come back. Mr. Simon, are you sure? Did you see Mrs. Sarah in person? No, I only heard the ringtone, but it stopped quickly. I thought she didn't want to see me and left after answering another call. Simon didn't mention who had called him. Everyone quickly went to the backyard. As soon as they entered, Laura covered her nose. What's that smell? I thought it was probably the smell of my decomposing body. Everyone else smelled it too, covering their noses. The officers followed the scent. My mother suddenly felt suffocated, a bad feeling rising in her heart. They found my body. Seeing my decomposed body, Laura's eyes turned red with rage. She rushed at Simon, trying to hit him. My mother knelt beside my unrecognizable body, crying out. My child! My father, looking like a withered tree, swayed as if he might fall. "Auntie!" Laura cried out as my mother fainted. Laura, her hands shaking, pulled out her phone to call an ambulance. Tears blurred her vision, and she wiped her phone repeatedly, unable to clear them. When the ambulance arrived, my father and Laura went with my mother to the hospital. Laura then knelt by my grave, crying uncontrollably. Chapter 11. Simon, who had been knocked to the ground by Laura, slowly got up. He wasn't angry, just lost, his face blank and bewildered. As the police continued to examine the body, he suddenly screamed. "No! This can't be my wife. My wife doesn't look like this. Mr. Simon, the deceased has been gone for some time, making facial recognition difficult. We will conduct a DNA test to confirm the identity," the officer said. With that, the police took my body away. Laura also left, leaving Simon alone in the backyard, staring into space. There was no need for a DNA test. Simon should have recognized me. I was still wearing the clothes from the night we argued, the bracelet he gave me, and our wedding ring. He just didn't want to admit it. "Sarah isn't gone. She called me that night. She can't be gone," Simon muttered, looking deranged. He remembered the call I made, the one he ignored, a cry for help. "Simon, wake up!" Lily, who had been hiding, ran out and hugged Simon from behind. "Simon, Sarah is gone. Don't be like this." Simon turned to look at Lily. "You still have me. I'll always be here." Knowing I was gone, Lily must have been overjoyed. "No! You're lying." Simon suddenly pushed Lily away, his eyes bloodshot. "It's all your fault. Yes, it's all your fault." Simon grabbed Lily's neck. "If it weren't for you, Sarah and I wouldn't have fought. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have left that night, and Sarah wouldn't have been hurt. It's all your fault." Simon's grip tightened. Lily's face turned red as she struggled, but her strength was no match for his. "Simon!" Lily managed to choke out before Simon let go and ran out. Lily coughed violently, realizing Simon had genuinely wanted to harm her. The thought made her shiver. Chapter 12. A few days later, news of my passing leaked online. Netizens were shocked to learn that the woman Simon had been caring for in the hospital was not his wife but another woman. Simon Group's reputation plummeted, and its stock prices fell continuously. "Oh my God! This Simon is such a jerk. His wife is gone, and he's in the hospital with his mistress. He's been posing as a devoted husband while caring for his mistress. What a schemer!" Lily was also exposed and now hid at home, afraid to go out. Simon was having a hard time too. Besides the online backlash, the Shen and Laura families started to take action. Simon Group's major projects were snatched away, and ongoing projects encountered numerous problems. It wouldn't be long before Simon Group collapsed. Simon Group had always relied on my father's resources. Once my father took action, Simon Group wouldn't survive long, especially with the Laura family also involved. Lily was arrested. Laura found that large sums had been transferred into the accounts of the 3 men who had harmed me. Investigations revealed that Lily had hired them. To avoid suspicion and make it look like a regular home invasion, they had robbed several other homes. Lily was sentenced to life imprisonment. Chapter 13. Lily didn't expect Simon to visit her in prison. "Why did you harm Sarah?" Simon asked. "Why?" Lily scoffed. "I schemed for years to live a good life, and she gets it all without lifting a finger. I worked hard to get close to you in school, but you were useless, so I left. Oh, and by the way, I wasn't forced to go abroad. I left because you were broke." Simon's face darkened with anger. "Poor Sarah even begged me not to leave, afraid you couldn't handle the blow. How funny that you married her, relied on her to rise again, and with just a few words from me, you abandoned her for me. It's laughable. If you had agreed to the divorce, I might not have harmed Sarah. It's your fault she suffered. You caused it. Lily laughed. Simon, enraged, lifted a chair to smash her, but the glass between them stopped him. The police quickly restrained Simon and took Lily away. She was right. My life was a joke. I devoted myself to helping Simon, but he abandoned me for a few words from her. Months later, Lily ended her life in prison. Chapter 14. Simon Group completely collapsed. Simon sold everything to pay off debts. My parents held a funeral for me. I followed Simon, hiding behind a tree, watching as my family and friends mourned. He wanted to go too but knew he wasn't welcome. My family didn't want to see him either. From a distance, I saw my mother crying at my grave, my father supporting her to prevent her from falling. My father seemed to have aged 10 years in just a few days. Laura cleaned my headstone repeatedly, her eyes red. I felt a heavy weight in my heart. I had let them down. Later, Simon went mad. I followed him as he wandered the streets, grabbing passersby and asking, "Have you seen my wife? Her name is Sarah. She's very beautiful and I love her very much." People avoided him, looking at him with disdain. Simon no longer resembled his former self. He wore tattered clothes, looking like a beggar. Eventually, Simon was admitted to a mental hospital. He still asked everyone he saw about my whereabouts, but they all gave him negative answers. Over time, people grew tired of him. "Have you seen my wife, Sarah?" Simon asked another patient. "Your wife is gone. Stop asking." The patient snapped, "You're lying. Sarah isn't gone." They began to argue, and the staff quickly separated them. To prevent further incidents, they confined Simon, not allowing him to roam. Chapter 15. A year passed. For some reason, my spirit still lingered in the world. But now, I could go wherever I wanted, not just follow Simon. I visited many places I had always wanted to go but couldn't while alive. Before marriage, I loved to travel, but after marrying Simon, I focused on him, losing myself. At least now, in death, I could wander freely, though I couldn't enjoy the food. After nearly a year of wandering, I returned home and stayed with my parents every day. After my passing, my father handed the company to my cousin. He now spent his days at home with my mother. Laura often visited them, bringing them joy. She had also taken over the family business and was doing very well. It was the anniversary of my passing. I followed my parents and Laura to the cemetery. From a distance, I saw someone lying by my grave. As my parents approached, I saw it was Simon. He was gone. My father, finding it unlucky, had him removed. The mental hospital said he had escaped, injuring several staff members. After dealing with Simon, my mother talked to me at my grave, telling me all the family news. My father chimed in occasionally. Laura cleaned my headstone again. She always did this when she was feeling down. Finally, she placed my favorite flowers at my clean headstone and said, "Sarah, live well in the other world. Don't let yourself suffer." It was just like when she left for abroad. Even though I don't like you marrying Simon, you still need to live well. Don't let yourself suffer. My spirit began to dissipate. I was finally leaving this world.